for centuries. The true origin of the African peoples has been debated, distorted, and in many cases intentionally hidden. Ancient civilizations left traces, the Bible left clues, and archaeology uncovered fragments of a story far older and far more powerful than most people realize. Today, we're going to uncover what the scriptures actually say. Not what tradition teaches, not what modern narratives repeat, but what the ancient texts, Hebrew, Greek, and even apocryphal writings, reveal about the origin of Africa and the people who came from it. Prepare yourself, because once you hear this, you will never see human history the same way again. 1. The continent the world forgot was in the Bible. When most people read the Bible, they imagine only Israel, Egypt, and the Middle East. But the scriptures speak repeatedly of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Sheba, names that directly correspond to regions and peoples of Africa. In Genesis 10, the Table of Nations, there is something shocking. After the flood, Noah's sons repopulated the earth, and one of them, Ham, became the ancestor of African nations. Ham had 4 sons: Cush, Ethiopia, Sudan, Horn of Africa; Mizraim, ancient Egypt, Put, Libya, and North Africa, Canaan, the land later occupied by the Canaanite tribes. This means something powerful. Africa is not outside the biblical story. It is at the center of it. 2. Cush, the first great African kingdom. The word Cush appears dozens of times in the Bible. It doesn't describe a small tribe. It describes a massive, respected ancient kingdom. Isaiah calls Cush a tall and smooth-skinned people, feared far and wide. This is one of the oldest recorded descriptions of African peoples in ancient literature. But it gets even deeper. Genesis 10 says that from the kingdom of Cush came a figure whose name echoes through myths and forbidden books: Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Some ancient Jewish traditions say Nimrod built some of the first cities after the flood, including Babel, Erech, Akkad, and more. This suggests something historians rarely say. Early African descendants helped shape the first civilizations of Mesopotamia, not as outsiders, but as founders. 3. Egypt, a biblical civilization. With African roots, Egypt, called Mizraim in Hebrew, was another son of Ham, meaning the entire Egyptian civilization traces its biblical origin directly to Noah's lineage. The Bible doesn't describe Egypt as a distant enemy. It describes it as a brother nation, a civilization with deep ties to Israel. Moses lived in Egypt. Joseph ruled Egypt. Jesus found refuge in Egypt. Africa, once again, stands at the heart of the biblical narrative. 4. The Queen of Sheba, and the hidden Ethiopian royal line. One of the most fascinating biblical stories appears in 1 Kings 10. A powerful African queen, the Queen of Sheba, travels to Jerusalem to test King Solomon with hard questions. She arrives carrying gold, rare stones, spices that existed only in deep Africa. Solomon is stunned by her intelligence and her power. Most people stop there, but Ethiopian tradition goes further. The ancient text known as the Kebra Nagast says the Queen of Sheba had a son with Solomon. His name was Menelik. He became the founder of Ethiopia's royal dynasty, and according to the same tradition, the Ark of the Covenant was taken to Ethiopia, where many believe it remains to this day. If that is true, Africa doesn't just appear in the story. It guards one of the holiest relics in biblical history. 5. What apocryphal texts reveal about Africa? When we read outside the biblical canon, the Book of Jasher, Jubilees, and Ethiopian writings, the story expands dramatically. These texts describe how the world was divided among Noah's sons. And guess what? Multiple ancient sources say that Ham's descendants were given the richest lands, warm climates, fertile soil, rivers, gold, and abundant resources. Africa was seen as a land of blessing, not darkness. The idea of Africa as inferior came centuries later, from political motives, not scripture. Even the Psalms declare, Ethiopia shall stretch out her hands to God. Some Jewish scholars say this is a prophecy, that African nations would one day play a major spiritual role. And in the New Testament, the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8 becomes one of the earliest recorded Christian converts. Africa appears again, not as a footnote, but as a central character of sacred history. 6. The forgotten role of Africa in prophecy. In the book of Zephaniah, a mysterious line appears. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my people will bring offerings. This suggests something powerful. African peoples were not outsiders. They were seen as God's people, part of the divine plan. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel all mention African nations in their prophecies, not only as allies or enemies, but as significant civilizations with spiritual destiny. Some historians even argue that early Hebrews and Africans